Okay, I think you bring it back. I think I'm going to ask everybody in turn to give their thoughts. I know a lot of things have been basically questions directed at John, so we'll finish with him. But if everybody else could make their points.
Thank you. So let's have a look. Jobs of the future and how to transition. I think certainly in our industry, a lot of the jobs that we currently have will stay the same or be very similar, but they'll be much greener. So our lorry drivers will still be lorry drivers, but the lorries won't be emitting diesel fumes into the air. We'll be using electric lorries. But I think, but I think what would be good is if we had, manufacturing in this country that was creating those electric engines, was, totally creating the wind turbines that you see as you drive up to East Yorkshire, because they're everywhere, and if they're everywhere, there's obviously a demand for them. So yeah, I think that would be good. How to transition from non-green to green. I think in the first instance it's about educating and empowering the people that are concerned, that are going to be transitioned over, that it's not scary, that they're not going to have the salary stripped, that they're not going to have the skills rendered useless, that they'll be transitioned along with them. And that's where the power of the trade unions comes into its own, because we would be sat around the table saying to companies, look, this is where we are, that's the bottom line, we want to be improving our people, we don't want them to be any worse off for transitioning over. Something that I didn't mention when I was speaking earlier was TUC, the Trade Union Clean Air Network that has been set up. You can find the information on that on Greener Jobs Alliance, and I think that's a fantastic tool and resource for people, whether you're in a workplace, whether you're in a community, whether you stood outside a school, to get involved and to understand what air pollution is, because coming from an industry where dust pollution from flour has always been right, we tend not to look at anything else, but actually sitting in your office with the air conditioning on that's blowing in the air from outside where there's a major road and all the exhaust fumes is also detrimental to people's health. So there's lots that we can do going forward. But yeah, nobody asked me any questions.
Yeah, no one asked me any questions either, so I'll keep it brief and just come back on a few points. It was actually to build a bit on the suggestion around developing kind of the world's more wealthy countries, developed nations, kind of helping kind of the global south in terms of with that finance and technology transfer, absolutely. And of course there's lots of kind of knowledge to share, but also there's a huge amount that we can actually learn from the global south as well when it comes to climate change and kind of stewardship of the environment. And kind of some of the examples actually sparked around Kenya, where there's been a massive tree planting project going on for many, many years now, led by women, Bangladesh women on the front line of flooding, actually building resilience in their communities, kind of the Latin American leadership, which has been brilliant for many, many years now in international kind of climate talks, Chinese investment in renewable technology and electric vehicles, and Palestinians under terrible conditions developing kind of community energy projects. I mean, that is kind of like actually inspiring stuff for people, adapting to their circumstances, but also trying to do things more sustainably. So I think we should celebrate that. And of course, many of you will have seen the burning of the Amazon rainforest, kind of totally sanctioned and supported by the Bolsonaro government. And there's just been heroic resistance of Brazilian populations to that. So those are kind of things that we should be learning from and drawing from as well. Just on the issue of climate change and its links to militarism. Friends of the Earth kind of took part yesterday actually in the Newham Peace Fair, which is kind of an alternative new thing set up by the Mayor of Newham to the massive kind of arms fair that happens at the Excel Centre, I think every year or so. And it is important to make those links, and Friends of the Earth is still a proud affiliate to the CND, the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, because we absolutely understand that these issues are linked. And the question really is around the just transition, is that it's something that we absolutely need to have. People that have been skilled up for many, many years, work working on what we now kind of recognise as industries that we might not want to have in the future, whether they're high carbon or socially destructive. Absolutely, those people should be retrained and redeployed to actually be, building and engineering kind of the technology of the future that will help us get out, address the climate crisis, and use their skills and talents for social good. And absolutely it has to be done in discussion with unions, with the employer, with government involved as well, and obviously local authorities where possible. I want to just end on saying, massive thank you for organising this meeting. I think it's been fantastic and I've learned a lot and really enjoyed the kind of conversations. But I do want to just take a quick moment, because it hasn't quite been said yet, just say, a theoretical thank you to kind of the, people like Greta Thunberg and the youth strikers, because I do think that actually without them, probably wouldn't be here discussing it, and the world wouldn't be waking up as it is to the climate emergency. So please, let's give a round of applause for them. Young people.
Do I need to stand up?
Yeah.
We didn't comment on my question about the technology here and the impact on the global south.
Somebody else will comment. I mean, we can't. I don't think every question is going to be answered. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try and come back to as many, quite a few questions here, and then Simon will try and answer your question, perhaps. The question on public buildings, I think that's absolutely valid. There shouldn't be any new public buildings made that aren't really up to standard. The Civic Centre is supposed to be the greenest public build. Brent Civic Centre is the greenest public building in the UK, so that's a good start. But absolutely, any new public buildings should follow in that ilk. I think the theme about institutions not being up to the task at hand has really come out today. The IMF has been mentioned. The Shadow DEFRA team, we're looking at the organisational infrastructure around DEFRA and how we redesign that to address the climate and environment emergency, because it's just not up to the task at the moment. But I would also say, and this is something that Ian did want me to mention, is that culturally institutions, I think, are not up to the task of the climate and ecological emergency. Extinction Rebellion puts a lot of emphasis on something called regenerative culture, regen culture, and that really fundamentally challenges old ideas of what power and leadership in politics look like, and says that we need to change because our institutions and our institutional cultures are not serving our social or environmental well-being. So, I think we shouldn't miss the cultural institutions and cultural ways of the way that we go about politics and meetings, because I think that culture of domination, extreme hierarchy, disconnect, exploitation are things that we need to address as well. Women and the economy. The lady over here was talking about gender impact in the economy, which is very close to my heart. I was on the management board of the Women's Budget Group. I know that John is a big advocate for gender budgeting and making sure that the way that we think about accounting and economics doesn't disenfranchise women. So I just want to reassure you that John is, he gets this, and it's very much what, intrinsic to Labour's approach when we talk about the economy and services. Has retrofitting started at Brent? I would like to make it clear, I'm not speaking on behalf of Brent Council tonight, but I can find out for you. The council for a long time did pay an organisation called Energy Solutions to provide retrofitting services. That was cut when over half of the council's budget was cut by the government. But Energy Solutions do still exist, and they do provide support and advice if anyone is in energy debt or needs help and advice. Is that right, Martin? You're shaking your head. Okay. That information might be out of date, I've just been told. Circular economy, and where are the new jobs going to come from? I think the circular economy is a real source of jobs and economic regeneration. Greener UK estimates that there are 500,000 jobs to be created with investment in the circular economy. Steel is a really good example. At the moment, we import almost all of the raw materials for steel, and we export between 80 and 90% of scrap steel. There's a company called Liberty House that has set up steel manufacturing in towns where manufacturing went under in the 80s. They're producing recyclable steel using scrap steel, and I think there's real potential in that. It's something that we've discussed with Becky Long-Bailey's team in the Labour base team, but I really think there is something in the circular economy. We know that our recycling and waste system is broken at the moment. What we consider recycling and what we look at when we look at recycling figures are essentially what is collected and then shipped abroad to the Far East, where it then ends up in the ocean. So, you know, really the whole system is a bit of a facade. We don't have the infrastructure nationally in Britain to deal with our own waste, to reuse and recycle, and I think that's something that desperately needs investment.
Okay, great. Okay, so yeah, so I'll Simon to...
Yeah, so on, I'll try and talk about the other things I was asked about. So electric cars. The Labour for Green New Deal are clear that electric cars are not the solution. You know, there is to match all of the cars we have now with electric cars would take more than half, I think, the cobalt on the whole planet. And yeah, it involves extracting resources from the global south and would be another form of extractivism and colonialism in another name. So our solution is instead to do away with this idea of private luxury and replace it with the idea, I think George Monbiot put it, of private sufficiency and public luxury. So that means public luxurious transport for all, hopefully available free. So that's what we say to that. On Harland the Wolf, I think Martin raised, I think it's like, if people don't know it, it's the shipyard in Belfast where they built the Titanic over 100 years ago. And their members have been on strike, and one of the things they've been demanding is actually a Green New Deal. So these are Unite and GMB members calling for a Green New Deal, and we've been in touch with them because that's the only long-term guarantee of people's jobs, is jobs that are going to be able to survive the green transition. We can't keep trying to save jobs in Heathrow because, you know, the planet won't last that long if we keep doing that. So on the question of green jobs, I think that, as you said, the name Green New Deal doesn't have that much brand recognition. But I'd say that, you know, the Green New Deal, you know, the New Deal didn't have a meaning to people until it delivered them something, and it's a question of a New Deal. And I don't like the Green Industrial Revolution thing, because for me, the Industrial Revolution makes me think of my ancestors being put down mines and forced to dig for coal. So for me, it has negative connotations, but I don't know what other people think. But yeah, so I would go with a slogan, if it's not the Green New Deal, of 1 million green jobs. I think that should be what Labour's like in a manifesto, a bold thing. And these jobs, they don't just have to be retrofitting and doing all this infrastructure stuff that needs doing. We've got to remember that care and social work and health and education are all mostly carbon zero jobs, so we need to be expanding them. And if there aren't enough jobs to go around, then I think we should be talking about, as the woman said earlier, about universal basic income. And I think it's, I'm personally in favour of it. It's not in the Green New Deal because we've already got universal basic services. We have got a shorter working week, hopefully 4-day week in the proposal. So maybe we'll also have UBI, but that might be pushing a bit too far. I don't know what John thinks. But yeah, if we're wrapping up, I just want to say thanks for this. Yeah, it's really great to hear John talking about community energy, local community-led green plans, because I think that is the solution. And yeah, I hope I wasn't too harsh on him, because he's one of my political heroes, and I want to thank him for what he's doing. It's really inspiring, and I hope continue going and win the next election. Thanks.
Okay, so now I know he's not going to be able to. He's got loads of notes, and he took a call from Jeremy just earlier. So I don't know if he's going to help him, but so if you could answer whatever questions you can, John.
Okay. I feel absolutely brutalised. No, not at all. Everything you're doing is brilliant. Let me run through the whole series of questions we can very quickly, and then I've got to shoot off because something's cropped up. Nitin, who I used to work with years ago, he raised this issue about buildings and design and how we go about controlling that. What we're doing at the moment for my Treasury team, there's a thing called a Green Book in the Treasury. It's nothing to do with the environment, it's just coloured green. But the Green Book and the criteria upon which investment decisions are made by government. And so what we're doing now is a review of the Green Book, because every decision that's made on capital investment has to apply to the criteria of the Green Book are applied to it. So we've just done an exercise in my Treasury team to rewrite the Green Book with new criteria. So the first criteria is on the investment decisions, does it tackle climate change? That's the first thing. The second thing then is, does it then tackle inequality, in particular regional inequality? So there's a range of criteria there. That will overcome some of the issues we've had up until now about how decisions are made that fly in the face of overall policy making with regard to climate change. The second issue is in education. Nitin raised the thing about the nature of schools. We've been campaigning and promoting, my daughter's involved as a teacher, forest schools and the concept of the forest school sector. And there's a brilliant piece of work done by a woman called Rowena Passy, who's a friend of ours, an advisor, down at Plymouth University, about how that's developed. And again, it's something we'll put money into. The issue was made over here about our system is based upon profit. That's why we're trying to transform the whole concept of our system, so it isn't based upon profit, but it's based upon need. And that's why we're developing the concept of universal basic services. So not just health, not just education, but issues like transport as well. So we've already committed ourselves to free bus passes for under 25s. In Scotland, the Labour Party now is campaigning for free bus transport, full stop, for everybody. So we're exploring that. And the issues around land that were raised and overseas properties, the lady was raised about the issue of Kenya. It's interesting. I know Kenya well because my wife's from Kenya. It's interesting the environmental degradation that actually the economic system has brought about as well. Like Lake Nakuru, because of they've concentrated on the flower sector, exported to this country, and the lake itself now is unfortunately in a poor state because of the chemicals that are used to do that. So there's a whole range of issues that we have to address. But one of the issues here is the point that you raised about overseas property ownership. At the moment, we have a situation in London in particular where overseas companies are buying up properties in areas like my own where Crossrail is going through. They don't even have to let them out to make a profit because the profit value is going up all the time. The way we're seeking to overcome that is we put in our last manifesto, and we're now developing the detail of it, is the development of land value taxation on non-residential property, on profit-making properties, if you like. And in that way, you enable then to ensure that when the investment of public money on infrastructure takes place and the values increase of land, it's distributed then again by the local community. One other issue we put in the last manifesto, and part of the Treasury team work, was for where companies from overseas owning properties here would have an additional levy on them beyond just the existing business rates and rates. We were attacked for that, but actually it operates in Canada, it's in a whole range of places. But it's one way in which we harness some of the values and profits that are made. The issue was raised, Harland and Wolff was raised. I visited Harland and Wolff a month ago. I joined the occupation. Harland and Wolff is a shipbuilder, but what are the contracts that they got at the moment? The contracts they've got at the moment, they're building the base of the wind farms. And the irony of it is that they had contracts coming in that the company management turned away. And it is all about, I think, about the nature of the management of that company and the attempt to profiteer from some of the problems that they've had. On the Lucas Aerospace plan, I went to the film on Lucas Aerospace to its launch, because years ago on the GLC I funded Mike Cooley, who was part of that, to tour around the country to demonstrate how the Lucas Aerospace plan could work. Workers coming together to develop the new technology of the future, in which that would secure jobs but also tackle then climate issues as they identified them. What we're doing now is we've set up not a National Enterprise Board, we're setting up a National Investment Bank. We've got a National Transformation Fund, which will be organised by the Treasury, but the bank will have regional development arms. The National Transformation Fund will be based upon local decision-making about investment, and a lot of it will go towards tackling climate change. But we're trying to do it in a way in which the investment goes into the development of cooperatives, workers' plans, the democratising of the economy at every level. And that means legislation, for example, to introduce making sure a third of every board has comprising worker representation. All of those are going forward on the basis of some of the lessons that we've learned from the past experiences of Lucas Aerospace Plan, the NEB, etc. The points that Nina raised about care income, I'm not sure how far we've got on the development of the wording around that, but I'll take it back to the manifesto discussions that we're having now. Anything you can do about people raising that at conference would be really helpful as well. I think we're moving on it. You're right, we didn't go far enough last time, but it was good to get something in there. And I accept the issue about living wage. On the military pollution, it isn't really discussed a lot. Some of my Treasury team this week are down at the arms sale on the protests down there, and I think there's a pollution on the planet, but also the debate that some of us have been raising as well is the pollution that takes place in space now as well. And that's what was worried about Trump's statements around militarization of space. So again, I think it's a wider debate that we need to maybe take back and bring more to the centre of all of this. On the shorter working week, the Skidelsky report is being published tomorrow. Again, that's looking at how we can have a shorter working week overall, what steps we need to undertake it. Some have argued for a 4-day week, some have argued about restriction on working hours or regulation of some form. We'll receive the report tomorrow and then launch that for consultation and a wider debate. The issue for some, though, I have to say, we've had a bit of a kickback on it because there's a lot of workers, particularly outside of the London and the South East, who are saying actually we can't get enough hours. But you can see what the problem we've got is the nature of our economic system is that some people are working all that's got said just to survive, keep a roof over their heads, whilst others can't find the hours of work because of what's happening in their local communities. Once you start developing the plans for your economy, you can make sure that there's opportunities for everyone to have the work that they need, but they're not exploited as well. And that means the restoration of trade union rights and scrapping the anti-trade union laws that we've had in this country for a number of years. On the circular economy, Kate Raworth, who did the book on donut economy, is one of our advisors. So in the discussions that we're having, her team and others, it's central to the work that we do and how we want to design the economy for the future. Michael raised the issue about the third runway. Sadiq Khan actually has come out against the third runway, which is helpful. But the issue then is how do we go on, because what we don't want is we don't want to be dumping it somewhere else, and that's the whole debate that we're having at the moment. And I speak from a constituency interest, obviously, but also from the environmental issues as well. In terms of the deportation of foreign nationals at the moment, the regime is brutal, to say the least. It's gone beyond a hostile environment, absolutely brutal. I've got 1,000 people tonight who'll be in my constituency locked up in Armoursworth and in Colnbrook detention centres. We lock up more people than any other European country when it comes to the issues around migration. And from those people that will be in Harmsworth and Colnbrook, about a third of them will be released anyway into society. But it involves, I think, a level of brutality where we've had suicides in there as well. And as you know, Harmsworth has been burned down twice as a result of riots as well, which is a reflection of how people are treated. Diane Abbott has made it clear that we're going to review the whole regime. So we treat people humanely in all instances. The issue around, I never mentioned before either about the energy issue that came up. In the discussions at the local community level that we're having, a large number of the communities that we're talking about are talking about setting up through their local authority energy companies about how they can then harness the resources locally to develop local energy supplies, but where the local community shares in the income that they get from that and their local community benefits. And it's very much on the German model, whereby if you see what's happened there, they've broken the oligarchy, if you like, almost a monopoly of the big energy companies by making sure local energy sources are developed, but the local communities own them, and as a result of that gain the benefits from that. That leads on there for the issue about the universal basic service around fuel and a fuel allowance. I think we've opened up the debate now, where actually we can have that sort of debate. We wouldn't have had it a number of years ago. We can now. It might not be something that we can immediately address, but at least we can start the discussion about it, just as we've done around universal basic income, where it's incredibly controversial for some, from left and right. But on universal basic income, what we're suggesting for this manifesto is at least we have a pilot scheme in a couple of cities. Liverpool and Sheffield have been bidding to be the pilot schemes on there. So most probably in the manifesto we'll look at a pilot scheme and test that out. I can't answer any more questions. I think that's about as much as I can think of at the moment. I've forgotten some, but on the right to buy. The right to buy. Look, on tenants, private tenants, we're looking at what can give private tenants more security than they've got now. One of the discussions that we've been having is around tenancy agreements, of course, but also to give stability to families in the long term. People have raised the issue about offering right to buy to private tenants as well. So we're going to consult on that, and people are saying, look, if you've been there a large number of years, you should have the ability to have a right to buy. But at the same time, what people have been straight about as well, if there is a right to buy on that one, you cannot allow those people who have invested funds in that property to lose out either. So it has to be for a fair price if that's the case. So that consultation is going on. But of course, you know, we're going to a general election campaign. It's like in last general election campaign, we had in the manifesto the land value tax on non-residential properties. And the Tories and the Daily Mail run it as a garden tax. We've got to tax everyone's garden. So they'll do the same thing with the right to buy for private tenants. And what we've got to do is make sure people understand where we're at in that and the discussions that go on. Finally, the levels of investment we're talking about at the moment, the National Transformation Fund, which is our capital programme for the government departments, is £250 billion over 10 years. The National Investment Bank is £250 billion over 10 years. So you're talking about £500 billion worth of investment over a 10-year programme. Actually, that's nothing untoward from what's gone on in the past. So the discussions now about how that money is allocated, but it's interesting, in all the discussions we've had, the number one priority that's come up is tackling climate change. So when the bids are coming in from our different teams, and Roxanne, bids for money from her team and all the rest of it, what we're saying is, where does that fit with tackling climate change? And so the whole programme, you can see the thrust of the whole development of the next Labour government. It is about recognising we address the existential threat. The issue for us, how do we get cut through in the debate in the next general election as it comes, because we can't allow it just to be about Brexit. It's got to be about these more fundamental issues. Brexit is part of it, and our relationships with our European partners. But even there, we're working with Yanis Varoufakis and others about how we can launch a European-wide climate change programme and investment programme, using the existing European institutions as best we can, but maybe looking at new institutions too. But if we are going to have a general election campaign, we mustn't allow it to ignore the real issues that we face, because that's exactly what the Tories want. And we will work across party. We always have done with Caroline and others on all of these to make sure, that people understand the threat, but also they understand that, we're not powerless. We've got the solutions. It just needs the political will to undertake them. But that political will has to be driven at the local level by people actively engaged in a social movement, rather than just the political party sending people off to legislate. It's got to be driven at the community level. I'm going on too long, but thanks for inviting me tonight.
Thanks very much. I mean, this has been a really great evening. It's really good to have a whole evening of political debate and discussion where Brexit is hardly mentioned. I'd like to say thank you to the people who've organised this, Maria, Carol, Andrew and Pam, and Roxanne, who started off the idea.
And you.
And me. If you want to find out more about Brent Friends of the Earth, go to brentfoe.com, brentfoe.com. If you haven't given enough of your money tonight, you can donate on that page. You can sign up to our mailing list. It's all very simple and straightforward. I'd like to thank all the speakers who've been really, really excellent. And